And so Dr. White got on and he's like, Mikayla, unfortunately the biopsy came back and it's breast cancer. And I just lost it. And like, I'll never forget being in my office at work and I'm like, I'm pregnant. Like, how can I have cancer while I'm pregnant? So we tried and never could get pregnant. So finally we got to the mental state of, okay, let's get fertility option, treatment's an option. So we tried. We did, it's a thing called IUI. It's like a step before an IVF. And so we did 3 of those. The third one took, and then ended up in like a chemical pregnancy. So then we did 3 more. The 6th one took. And we actually just bought 40 acres in October of 2023. Found out I was pregnant like 2 weeks after buying our property. And then 2 weeks after that, found out I had cancer. So it was like October of 2023 was where everything hit. But yeah, so before that, we were just living a life. We knew my husband always wanted property. He knew he wanted to raise a farm. We knew we wanted our kids to have the 4-wheelers and the property to run, So that's what we were building for. We were creating our life for our family.
Yeah. It's an unbelievable journey. So my wife and I had to do IVF to get our daughter and our one who's now on the way. But he's so we understand that world very, very deeply. We never did IUI ourselves. It wasn't an option for us, but I'm aware of it and I know like what it's like. We had to go through the chemical pregnancies and things like that. And it's just such an immense challenge.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what that had to be like to battle through that challenge of just being able to get pregnant in the first place. And then finally you buy this dream property. You have this dream come true of this pregnancy and your son. And then to have all of that completely shaken.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging.
What was it like because I'll never forget the moments in that doctor's office when I was initially diagnosed. What was it like for you when they're coming in and telling you like you have cancer, this is what's happening? So
I actually was at work and my doctor called me.
Oh really?
And the doctor left a voicemail and it was my OBGYN.
Okay.
They were the ones that did the biopsy. And it was actually an ultrasound tech that pushed the radiologist to get the biopsy. And then so my OBGYN was the one that they sent the results to. So at the time I was working as a loan officer.
Okay.
And so I wasn't able to answer my phone. I was with a member doing a loan. And then once the member left and I picked up my phone and I saw that the actual doctor left me a voicemail, I was like, okay, crap, this isn't good. It's usually not the doctor that leaves a voicemail. Yeah. So I immediately call them back and they're like, yeah, Dr. White wanted to talk to you. Let us get Dr. White on the phone. And so Dr. White got on and he's like, Mikayla, unfortunately the biopsy came back and it's breast cancer. And I just lost it. And like, I'll never forget being in my office at work and I'm like, I'm pregnant. Like, how can I have cancer while I'm pregnant? You're like, that's impossible. And so he's like, I want you to come in tomorrow. And their office was closed the next day. But he was like, come in tomorrow with any questions you have. And I immediately just lost it. And I called 3 people. I called my husband, obviously. And I couldn't even get out the words that I had cancer. I was just sobbing. And he thought we lost the pregnancy. Yeah. He was like, what's wrong with the baby? Yeah. And I was like, it's not the baby. So then I finally got out the words. Dr. White called me and my biopsy came back that I have breast cancer. And then I called my mom, and my poor mom was at work. I bawled on her, gave her the news. I knew she would call my dad. And the next person I called was my pastor's wife. And she sat on the phone and as I cried, prayed over me and gave me peace. But yeah, like you said, that's a moment you will never forget. And then I went into the doctor's office the next day and they were telling me, they didn't even tell me what type of cancer it was yet. They just said it was breast cancer. And she said, you're going to have chemo. And I was like, yeah, after I give birth. And she's like, no, while you're pregnant. And I'm like, you can't have chemo while you're pregnant. And yeah, I'm like, like this doctor knew me.
Yeah.
And I was like, how hard I fought for this baby. I'm not doing anything to this baby. And she's like, no, there's safe ones out there. Mm-hmm. So then she sent me to an oncologist here in Belpre. And that oncologist is actually the one that told me, hey, you have triple negative. And my mom, we don't know anything about cancer or what type. Yeah. You don't know until you get diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And my mom's like, okay, I'm negative. That's good, right? And she's like, no, unfortunately, triple negative's like the most aggressive type of breast cancer. And we're like, what? Like, we don't know any of this. And she's like, you immediately need to go up to Columbus and like, you need to be treated up there. They'll have all the answers for you. So then that first day we went to Columbus, my mom and my husband went with me. And we were there for 8 hours of testing and doing more biopsies and meeting this doctor and meeting the surgeon and just going through all of that. And that was the longest day of my life. Like, I'll never get over that day. I think I slept the whole way home from Columbus and all night that night because it was just exhausting getting all that information bombarded to you. You don't understand anything. Mm-hmm. Then your poor family doesn't understand anything, and you're trying to explain to people and you're like, I don't know, I don't understand it. It's just, like you said, exhausting. Yeah. Exhausting when you get that and hard to process all of it.
Well, that's the crazy part is it's not even just like this. I think people expect it to be this like sadness or this anger, this frustration. It's like there's just so much overwhelming emotion at first that it leaves you feeling physically exhausted, which for me after that led to me just feeling totally numb for a while.
Yeah.
And I know you experienced that as well.
Well, because they move very fast with that.
They do.
You kind of don't have time to think about it. You're like, okay, we're starting. Here's the date. It's probably that week or the next week. I mean, when I was diagnosed, it was I was getting treatment. The following Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that. So yeah, it was pretty quick.
Yeah,
pretty quick.
Me being pregnant, I had to wait till my second trimester. Mm-hmm. Okay. But actually, that's another part of the story is you have to wait till your second trimester to get chemo while you're pregnant, and you can only get certain chemos. And the place that I did my fertility with and my OBGYN couldn't agree on a due date. And my OBGYN kept wanting to push my due date earlier. Like, no, she's due July 1st. And my fertility doctor was like, no, she's due July 11th. And so I actually ended up getting chemo while I was still in my first trimester because they listened to my OBGYN. But it didn't even touch my son. God protected him. And I was like, that's a whole nother part of the story. That's my son's story is, hey, my mom was giving chemo while she wasn't supposed to. I wasn't safe. And you can't even tell. When he was born, I asked the doctors, can you tell I had chemo or anything? And they said, no, you could never tell. Yeah. It was the biggest baby in the NICU.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. Oh my gosh. It really gives a whole new perspective. And when I tell people about this, because I told a couple people you were coming on, mm-hmm. and they're just blown away in amazement every time, because most people don't understand that when you have cancer while you're pregnant, you actually can receive chemotherapy during certain parts of that pregnancy. It's got to be very specific parts, very specific agents, but you can receive chemotherapy. And the just like the design of the human body and physiology is so immense.
It's wild to hear.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like we have the blood-brain barrier, right, that keeps all the certain things from our blood can get in, certain things cannot get in, and the brain is the body's very specific about what gets in and what doesn't. It's the same thing with like a placenta. When you're growing a baby, like there's some things that can get in, some things that absolutely cannot.
Right.
The body's very specific with it. So we've been able to find chemotherapy agents that just cannot cross that barrier. Yeah. And it's wild. It's like the baby then gets to grow and really thrive in its own little world, independent outside of any of the toxic chemotherapy that you have to experience. So that's a massive blessing in and of itself, as hard as that situation is. The fact that it can be done, and you could have an extremely healthy son at the biggest weight in the NICU, is such a blessing. But it really puts it into perspective, because a cancer diagnosis is crushing enough in and of itself. But then to receive that diagnosis after just finding out that you were pregnant, after so much challenge of just getting pregnant, what were some of the thoughts, the emotions, the challenges you had to battle, and just because not only do you have to accept this horrible diagnosis, you've got to accept it in the face of, I want to do everything I can to preserve my child. What was that experience like?
So I'm a Christian, and through this whole thing, I've never been mad at God. I believe God has a will and has a plan, but that's not to say I never questioned God why. Mm-hmm. And my thought was, why? I know God's too good to finally let me have my desire to have a kid, and then to give me cancer. I didn't understand why. Why, God? Why now? Why am I going through this? I knew, like I said, I knew God was too good to give me my desire, to give me this bad news, and then to take my baby from me. I knew he wasn't going to do it. So I guess that's there's a scripture that says, he gives peace that passes beyond all understanding. And I guess that's what I felt after I went through my why mindset. Why is this happening? Why, all that. I had a peace that, okay, I know God. I know he's too good and he won't take my baby from me. So whatever I have to go through, I'm going to trust him. And that was my whole family's mindset, that we're going to trust God. And like the day that I went to the doctor, the next day after I got diagnosed, a nurse pulled me aside and she's like, hey, you need to get an MRI to see if the cancer's anywhere else, but it's not safe while you're pregnant. So you need to make a decision right now. Are you going to go do an MRI and like it not be safe, or are you not going to? And I went and sat down with my mom and my husband, and I was like, what am I going to do? You don't know. And my husband said, well, we either trust God to protect the baby while you do the MRI, or we trust God that the cancer is nowhere else and not do the MRI. So we decided right there, we're trusting God and I'm not doing the MRI. I'm going to trust God to protect my baby. Mm-hmm. So that was my whole mindset. It's been my whole mindset of just trusting God and believing his plan and believing that this does something for me. But it didn't, like I said, it didn't stop the whys. Mm-hmm. And I like I said, I've never been mad at God. Never once. I know now why I was diagnosed in the first place. But at the time I didn't, but yeah, the whys and the crying at nighttime, when no one else is there. All of that. It's just mentally exhausting, mentally hard. Yeah. You guys know.
Well, we know in our own sense, but we don't know to the level that you do, because it's one thing for it to affect yourself. It's an entirely different thing for it to affect your child. And that love that exists between a parent and a child, there's absolutely nothing else in this world, physical world, like it. And like I think, as a parent, I'm sure you have these like little thought processes run through your brain of like you're always looking for like dangers and risks. Yes. And like, oh God, what if this happens? What if they fall down the stairs?
Yes.
All these things. It's like I can't. It's hard. It makes me sick to even imagine like, oh gosh, what if she trips and falls down these stairs? Yeah. And so I can't even begin to fathom being in a spot of I have to receive this chemotherapy and trust that it is not going to affect this baby.
Yeah. Every chemo, I laid my hands on my belly and prayed over my son for God to protect him, and that none of the chemo would affect him, touch him or anything. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was one of the things I did. And I have said this before, having him and being pregnant has kept my fight. I could not imagine going through this and not having a kid, because I love my family dearly. But like you said, nothing beats the love between you and your kid. Yeah. And I tell my husband all the time, the reason I'm still fighting is for my son. I refuse to let him grow up without a mom. Yeah. And I'm not doing that. And I refuse to let someone else be his mom, even if it's my mom. You know what I mean? Like I refuse to let that happen. And so he is my fight. And I could not, it would be very hard, very, very hard to go through all of that and wonder, am I ever going to be able to have children? Maybe we could adopt eventually, but children of your own. Yeah. So actually being pregnant helped my mindset.